Wandering behind here now. There's options in the box. Gustavo brings it 2-0.
Last second, will it be now? Towards the back post, across goal! They have it! The substitute, Cho Yu-sung!
이영재가 다시 한번 기적을
Hello, 안녕하세요. Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. It's been a while. I'm Matthew Binns, and joining me this week are my regular co-host, Paul Neat. Hello, Paul.
Hello there.
And Andrew Farrell. Hello, Andrew.
Hey guys, good to be back.
Good to be back indeed. We'll forgo the longer introduction this week, gents, but just how have your summers been? Andrew, are there any new grounds you've ticked off since we last saw you?
I think so, yeah. It's probably been a couple. The best one, and I'm ashamed to say this because it's taken me 15 years to get to this particular stadium, despite living about an hour up the road from it for the first couple of years of my life in Korea. But I finally made it to Gwangyang Football Stadium, home of Jeonnam Dragons, over the summer. I saw them draw, I think it was a 2-2 draw in the end with Seoul Eland, met up with Osmar after the game. Outstanding stadium. It's funny because when you go there, it's a little bit like the Pohang Steelyard on the outside. It has that 60s concrete look about it, rustic, everything. There are literally rusting basketball nets outside the stadium. And then you go inside, and the color is whatever job they did, I gather over the last couple of years, has been magnificent. The black and the yellow color scheme really works. It's obviously a football-specific stadium, which is unusual in K-League 2. So everybody is basically sitting over the edge of the pitch. Atmosphere is amazing. Stadium is amazing. It's a bit out of the way to get to, but I recommend Gwangyang to anybody who's never been there.
Yeah, it's definitely a lovely stadium. It is a bit out of the way, though, for sure. And Paul, well, people have been tuning into you this summer on K-League TV. What's your favourite match that you've been commentating on this summer?
I think one that caught me by surprise was Suwon FC 5 Jeju 0, because I wasn't really expected to do that game anyway, because I think it was one that Alex got ill for. So it was last minute prep, and then I was like, Suwon against Jeju. I've done so many Suwon games this season. I wasn't really that up for it, but it ended 5-0, and I have to admit, for any of the people who watched this game, they may have noticed I missed the red cards. I was too busy sort of trying to get my outro finished, so I try to like pre-script just so I can organize my thoughts a little bit about. And there was so many goals as well to try and keep up with, like, you know, the goals and the minutes and who scored and when and what it means. So I missed the red card for No Kyung-ho in the last minute, and also for the first red card, the camera angle was too tight on something, and it didn't show what was happening sort of behind, and it wasn't very clear because there's no producer or anybody in my ear telling me what's happening. We are just looking at the same pictures that you're looking at, trying to figure out what's happened. So when a VAR's call is done, and they've sort of blown their whistle and pointed in one direction, we don't know what that means. So it's one of those situations where I was like, oh, and I just saw a little red thing appear on top of the score. It's like, there's been another red card. so I missed that. But it was 5-0. It could have been 6. Han Kyo-won scored at the end off the bench, but it got disallowed for offside, and it was eventful. So that was one, I think, because I just wasn't expecting it to be as eventful as it was.
Yeah, indeed. Well, as I can see Andrew actually in our private chat here already making reference to Chris Kamara, which does seem
Did
quite
you get your fingers out? Did you start counting the players when you
were... Yeah.
I don't know, Jeff.
No. Well, I'm sure it'll be possibly one of many nice things that we're going to say about Suwon, right, Andrew? We'll probably be talking about them a little bit later because, well, everyone, the split has been decided. If you've been following K-League yourselves, you'll know that last weekend, Final A and Final B, they're locked in with 2 rounds to spare. But fret not, because this is far from a boring outcome, with one of the tightest title races in years and perhaps the most exciting relegation scrap in K-League's history. And that's also not to mention an incredible fight for promotion that's going on down in K-League 2. We're going to be back to cover it all, with each week focusing on a different one of these races and offering updates and insights from not just ourselves, but a wide array of our columnists, plus mix zones galore. So these will even include the thoughts of perhaps one Jesse Lingard, who might make an appearance in today's episode. But to kick things off, we're going to turn our attentions to Final A this week, where the 6 teams have been confirmed and they all have a decent shot at the title. At the top of the table at present, it is Ulsan HD, followed by Gimcheon Sangmu, Gangwon FC, Suwon FC, Pohang Steelers, and FC Seoul. We're going to be running through each side from 6th to 1st to bring you up to speed with the story so far, their recent form, our thoughts on the man in charge, and the players to watch before we then offer our prediction on whether or not they have enough to finish top come the end of the season. So, to get things underway, gentlemen, we're going to start off in 6th place, where FC Seoul currently reside. Paul.
Yeah, well, the story so far with FC Seoul, a bit of a roller coaster, very up and down. I mean, they were very nearly dragged into the bottom 3 at one point. They went on that club record run of 5 defeats in a row at home, but since then they were on a great run of 6 wins in a row at home and got themselves into the title conversation. But before they realized that they'd actually done that, they are now out of it, kind of, really, the title race. Bit of a spoiler, but recent form, last 6, won 3 in a row, then they drew, then they lost, then they drew. Defeat to Daejeon, they were unprepared. They didn't realize that Daejeon were going to press, even though they'd done that in the last few games. They got undone by that. And then the draw against Daegu was disappointing, considering that they went ahead so late on in that game. But Cezinha scored that late equalizer, and you just can't give Cezinha that kind of space. So I think they'll be a bit disappointed with the last 3 matches, but still, because it's so tight, still a lot to play for. In terms of the manager and how well he's done, I think I'd give him a 6 out of 10 for me. I think he showed himself up in some ways by not being able to handle some of Seoul's bigger players. The weird comments earlier in the year about Lingard, they made him famous worldwide. Kim Ki-dong. Ronaldo has hardly featured, despite looking like, Ronaldo, Nazario, and in that 5-1 win over John Book. Not to mention Willian, who he scored 4 goals or 5 goals, and all have been off the bench, but he doesn't really get a look in. Other managers have struggled with him in terms of his alleged attitude, but I just think he hasn't really handled some things very well. His rotation with Ilyichenko has been a bit weird. And also, of course, as we've said many times before, the fact that he's worked with so many players already, I think it's like 7 or 8, and had that weird slow start, was a bit of a head scratcher. But that said, they do score goals. They have a good defensive record, even with Won Wang-gyu in the team. Yazan coming in kind of coincided with that upturn in form, but he was missing against Daejeon, and they felt it. I think probably in terms of the most important player for the games coming up, got to be Ilyichenko. He's in a bit of he was in a barren spell before that goal against Daegu. If they can get him in and around the box and get the ball into him, then they should have a chance of certainly ACL, and who knows. In terms of the title, 25% max. They've got themselves into a good chance of ACL, and they thought they were in the title race, and no one seems to want to win it. But the last 3 games has really undone them. In isolation, 0-0 draw away to Jeonbuk is a good result. But then that mad first 5 minutes against Daejeon really cost them, and then concentration again in that first 5 minutes and in the last 5 minutes against Daegu. That's why they're probably going to finish 3rd or 4th.
25%. Well, actually, that seems quite reasonable, all things considered. Andrew, we'll keep this short, but if you were to put a percentage probability, and I like to just kind of say beforehand, there isn't really a formula behind this. This is just gut feeling. It could be out of 10, out of 5, the number of FC Seoul jerseys out of 6. I don't know. Choose. But Andrew, title probability, rough percentage.
I was going for 2 out of 5, which is 40%. I think the big problem that they have, as Paula said, nobody seems to want the title. But the problem that they have is that there's still a number of teams above them. If they were just chasing Ulsan by themselves, I'd give them a slightly better chance than that, probably. But I think they're going to come second or third by the time the season's over. But 2 out of 5, 40-ish% chance of winning the title. Yeah, that's what I go for.
I'll match you on that. I think they're actually going to probably have a bit of a run. But okay, I'm just going to say 35%. I'm going to be nice. Nice to FC Seoul. It's been a long summer. But luckily, we don't have to take our probabilities into account because our very own Jung Muyol was on the ground after Daegu's late comeback against FC Seoul, where they dropped 2 points, and Muyol managed to grab a quick few minutes with Jesse Lingard. So is that interview.
FC Seoul were only a few seconds away from taking all 3 points with the courtesy of Ilyuchenko's second half goal, but Daegu's talisman Sejinya stepped up and rescued Daegu with a stoppage time equalizer in the second half. I'm joined by former Manchester United forward Jesse Lingard. It was very disappointing result for the capital side. How did you find the result?
I don't know. We killed them all game. They had like 3 chances all game. We dominated from start to finish. It's some of the best football we played all season. And, I think that's football, we did our best, for 90, 95 minutes. And, what can you do? He's hit the ball 25 yards with power. Our keeper couldn't see. And obviously they scored. So, it's part of football. We're disappointed, but we're going to stay positive because we played really well. We had a good week's training last week, so now we've got to keep consistent. But like I say, things happen in football, and we take a lot of positives from this game.
Well, obviously for FC Seoul it was very difficult, particularly in the first half. But second half things have changed a lot. And what kind of instructions did the manager give in a halftime talk?
No, we didn't find it difficult first half. We, like I say, we dominated the game. They didn't press us. We had all the possession. They made it tight for us in midfield in the first half. But they didn't really cause us problems. We caused them a lot of problems. And second half, I thought we had more, stamina than them. We was fitter. The pitch and the game opened up a little bit more for us. So, we created a lot more chances, and that's how the goal come.
Well, FC Seoul in a recent year, FC Seoul struggled in the league, but this season, FC Seoul doing pretty well in the league, but nearly getting close to top 6 finish in the league. And what area do you think the team needs to improve to get to the point where the team players want to be?
I think we'll get there. I think the way we've been playing, we'll definitely get top 6. I don't want top 6. I want top 4. I don't want top 4. I want to be champion. That's just my mentality, and I hope the team's mentality is the same. So, we're all on the same wavelength. We all know what goals we need to achieve and what we can hit this season. And I think definitely top 4 is 100% possible. But like I say, we've got to keep consistent. We've been doing really well past couple of weeks. We've only lost 1 game in 8 games, I think. So, that tells you a lot about, how far we've come as a team. So I'm proud of the lads, and, we've got to keep it going now.
And final question, despite the weather, a lot of Seoul fans braved the weather and came down to Daegu. And any final word for the fans?
Yeah, our fans are the best, they're top, It's just disappointing when, games go like that and they score last minute and you draw, it feels like a loss, and, the fans are cheering, for you at the end of the game, and you go to them, it's disappointing, what, like I say, they travel a long way. We put on a great performance for them, and, we appreciate, their support, always. Like I say, we have the best fans in the league, so, thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Thank you for your time, and all the best.
Jesse Lingard there, speaking with Jung Muyol after FC Seoul's 1-1 draw away to Daegu. He certainly seems a lot more confident in Seoul's chances. definitely seems very positive about how that game went. It was quite a difficult match, but we aren't really going to touch on it too much there. But yeah, Jesse Lingard being very positive, 100%
And
top four.
And also, it just shows you got to go to an away game if you want to speak to Jesse Lingard. We've tried a couple of times, Matthew, haven't we, to no avail. Mixzone. We've also tried to get him on a full interview. We've been told no, just in case anyone's wondering why we haven't had him on the pod or whatever. We have tried. So fair play to Muriel.
Fair play indeed. But yeah, thanks again to Jesse Lingard. Next, we're going to move slightly up the table to Pohang. I'm going to be taking this one. Pohang, they find themselves in 5th, but the story so far, well, it's been one that has started off fairly positive. The story had been one of exceeding expectations, perhaps. We came into the season thinking things might prove tricky for the Steelers. Manager Kim Ki-dong making the move to Seoul, plus a number of key figures leaving through the door. However, the management of Park Tae-ha saw Pohang set up early residency near the summit, and they looked like real challengers to their East Coast Derby rivals. Despite being one of the title races in years, Pohang have actually led the league this season for longer than any other side. Things have gone slightly awry lately, however. 6 consecutive losses in the league, plus a thrashing in the opening ACLE game, saw them slip into a position where they could have potentially finished in Final B, were it not for a dramatic win in round 31 last weekend. They've had injuries to contend with, no more so than a season-ending injury, to their lead scorer, Iho Jae, just over a month ago. But defensive lapses have cost them the most. They've been overly inviting at the back. They've been sloppy between the sticks, and all combined with a lack of credible threat up front. George Teixeira, despite his goal on Sunday, has struggled to get going, while summer signing Anjae Jun is still trying to find his feet since joining from Bucheon. Stats-wise, though, you can make an argument that they're actually just returning to the norm after overachieving. They're 3rd lowest for XG, despite a 3rd highest goals tally. It does somewhat point to a team who's been performing beyond their means. The man at the helm, then, Park Tae-ha, he cut his K-League coaching teeth as a coach at Pohang, Seoul, and the national team before taking charge as manager of Chinese Super League side, Yangbian Fude, and the Chinese women's side as well. As a player, he was the K-League equivalent of a one-club man, you could say. He's played only for Pohang and the military. Therefore, he was welcomed by the Pohang faithful at the start of the season, and until the recent dip, he looked like he could even do one better than his predecessor in achievements with his team. Ultimately, though, the downturn in form, it's shown that he needs more time. He needs more depth in his squad. However, wherever Pohang do finish this season, he's done enough to earn the continued support of the board, I feel. So I would probably give him a 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10, sorry, a 3 out of 5. We're all giving different ratings on this one, I'm sure.
That was harsh.
Yeah, no, he's done better than 3 out of 10. He's not a John Book manager. But yeah, who's going to be important in the running? Well, Jong Jae-hee is perhaps as an impact sub because he has got the 2nd highest goal tally, especially with Iho Jae out for the season. However, it's probably going to be an older head that will prove pivotal once more. Wanderson remains constantly involved in both defense and attack, in the top 5 in the league for defensive duels and interceptions, while also top 5 in the league for through passes and key passes, and 3rd for second assists. His experience could prove an asset in this title run-in. Speaking of the title, though, their probability of winning it, I have it less than Seoul, 20%. I feel that last week's result, despite being positive, despite being dramatic, doesn't mask the fact that they've just lost 7 on the bounce across all competitions. That win at the weekend bought them a bit more time, but the damage may well have already been done. And yeah, the squad looks shaky. They're lacking in depth, plus with multiple commitments in the Champions League and the FA Cup final. I think they're a year off from perhaps winning it.
Yeah, I think I mentioned in commentary, Matthew, about the XG. I think their XG is much higher than their actual goals tally. And as you pointed out on commentary, it's kind of shown that in the early part of the season, it's the luck's starting to run out, and things are starting to even themselves out in that regard. So yeah, I think I agree they have less of a chance than FC Seoul. They're on a bit of a downward trajectory, despite that dramatic win against Suwon at the weekend. No, Gangwon.
Yeah, Andrew.
10%. I would have said 10%. I agree with you. I think they're going to finish 5th where they currently are. And the fact that they have an FA Cup final against their great rivals from the south, I think that's where the priority lies for them for the rest of the season. They're guaranteed top 6, as we said, and they're just, as you said, they're probably a year or two out. I think this rebuilding mode could take a lot longer than that. Really, I think even at the start of the season, the three of us have predicted that they might struggle to finish inside the top 4. We were looking at where they currently are, so I would say definitely less than Seoul. I'm going to give them at a 10% possibility of winning the championship.
Fair enough. Okay, moving up to 4th, then Andrew, you have Suwon FC. Take us through how they've got here.
Yeah, Suwon FC, delighted to get this one. I seem to draw Suwon FC a lot when we do these, you pick out these straw things, and I draw the shortest straw, but it's been a really good season for Suwon FC. A brilliant season, in fact. They have massively overachieved, once getting themselves into a genuine title contending situation, and at the very least a continental spot for the reward. But sadly, the last few weeks have been overshadowed by 3 key events. Firstly, some high-profile departures. Secondly, a high-profile contract termination. And thirdly, 2 very heavy defeats. Currently, they're down in 4th with 48 points from their 31 games. They're only 7 points off the top. Just a reminder that this is a team that stayed up in 2023 only on goals scored. They just scored, their goal difference was worse than the Blue Wings, but they scored more goals, so they stayed up. And then they followed that up with a come from behind victory over Busan in the playoff when all looked dead. So I think, therefore, the season has to be deemed an unqualified success, no matter where they finish in Final B. But, football fans are fickle, so there will be a tinge of sadness if the season peters out, as I think it will, without much excitement. When they beat Ulsan 2-1 away, which was an incredible result, they followed that up. Paul was talking about a commentary with a 5-0 win over Jeju, and that was then followed up with a 2-2 draw away to Gangwon. It even looks better when you score a 94th minute equalizer, but the wheels have certainly come off then. I messaged one of the Suwon players after that game, the Ulsan game, and they were absolutely thrilled by that result, and kind of made a joke of I'm looking forward to going to the championship party later on this year. And that particular comment went unanswered. I think genuinely within the squad, they knew that they just don't have the depth or the quality to challenge for the K-League 1 title this season. But the wheels really have come off in the last couple of weeks. They lost Lee Sung-woo to Jeonbuk Motors. Jeonbuk Motors have kind of bought their way out of trouble at the moment. And then obviously Kwon Jung-won is left for the Middle East. And then we had a very difficult situation with Sun Jin-ho getting his contract ripped up a day before they play Jeonbuk Motors at home. So we'll obviously find a lot more about that in the future. But their last 2 games have been a 6-0 loss at home to Jeonbuk Motors. Salt added to the wounds when Lee Sung-woo came off the bench, was probably the best player in the pitch, set up 1, scored another. And then they lost 4-2 at home to Gimcheon Sangmu at the weekend. In terms of players to look forward to for the rest of the season, John Sung-won just seems like the obvious choice. He's got 8 goals and 6 assists, which is a really good return from midfield / playing up front alongside the strikers. Manager Kim In-jung, look, last season they had a goal difference of -32. This season they have a goal difference of -2, and that's only because they've conceded 10 in their last 2 games. And they've actually scored more goals this season than they did last season, when we thought that they were pretty maniac for much of last season. So he's improved them in almost every single area, but they just don't have the depth. They don't have the quality anymore. Their final 2 games are Seoul away and Pohang away. And that's why I think that in terms of winning the championship, I would give them a 0% chance, because to be honest with you, not only do I give them a 0% chance of winning the championship, I don't think they're going to win another game this season. So whatever I win the championship, I'd be surprised if they even pick up 3 more points. I think they're going to finish 6th. It's been a great season, but it's over for them now.
Yeah. I think you've kind of touched on all the points really there. Like, the steam is run out. It's been a good run. I would say 5% just to be a little bit more positive. You never know, but 5% chance. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it's not been made easy for them, has it? With key players being sold and contracts being torn up, and also just the fact that their last game before the split was supposed to be at home, the game that you and I are doing, Matthew, on commentary. It's now going to be away at Pohang. So they end the regular season with 2 away games against Seoul this weekend coming, and then away to Pohang. That might just set the tone, depending on. I mean, I think the performances the results might not be as important. It might be about the performances. And I think the manager said after the last game that he was quite happy with the commitment and how they kept going, and they were sort of kind of undeterred after they conceded, obviously, a 10th goal in 2 games. But yeah, I think these next 2 games might just set the tone for them. And I think they will win a game, maybe. But yeah, you do have to wonder, don't you? Because they're in the top 6, and we do often see that team that does end up finishing in 6th does become the sort of
Whipping
team
boys.
everybody beats, and they finish with fewer points than the team that finishes in 7th. That's just kind of how it works. That might be the case for Suwon, but they don't care. They aren't in the relegation battle. It doesn't matter.
Yep. All right, then. Well, another team that will be happy not to be in the relegation battle this season is the team in 3rd. Unlikely title challengers at the beginning of the season. In fact, perhaps favourites to possibly in a relegation scrap. But here we are. Gangwon FC. Paul, tell us about it.
Yes, well, the story so far, very nearly a fairy tale, and then perhaps it could still be seen as one because of just how good that they have been this season. Let's not forget as well, of course, this is a team that has never finished higher than 6th in K-League 1. They should therefore at least better that. Obviously, the emergence of Yang Min-hyuk and the incredible form of Hwang Min-gi and Lee Ki-hyuk and Lee Yu-hyun to a certain extent. Players reborn in new positions. Lee Sang-on as well in the form of his life. It's been a year actually. It's been a year for a few players who are having career years. And also Yago left. He was in good form, but it didn't matter because they signed Kovacevic. Great work by the club scouts. They're not on top anymore, but they did spend 3 weeks there, and that might just be enough. They were top of the league for 3 weeks. They were the best team in K-League 1 for 3 weeks, and they've been entertainers, and they've emerged. We've seen the likes of Yang Min-hyuk come through. We've seen them be good to watch. So it's been a great season for them, regardless of what happens here on in. Recent form, this is where things do start to tail off. 2 wins, then a loss, then a draw, then 2 losses. So they've lost their last 2, no wins in 4. Need to start to turn things around. Luckily for Gangwon, like we've just said, Suwon look like they are in a lot of trouble. So after the split, Gangwon will at least finish 5th, I think. They face a very determined Daegu this weekend and then Incheon in round 33. So teams in the relegation zone, teams in Final B, teams they should therefore be beating. And likewise, what I said just earlier about Suwon, these next 2 games might set the tone for Gangwon. If they can get some momentum, get back to winning ways, get that monkey off their back finally, because they're obviously without a winning 4. Just get back to winning ways against either Daegu or Incheon, and then see how things go. Manager rating, 9 out of 10. It has to be a contender for Manager of the Year. If they finish in the top 3, or even if they just qualify for the Champions League, because where Gimcheon finish will obviously impact that. If they finish in 2nd and they cannot go to ACL, they're not allowed, then it means that 3rd would therefore... So right now, as things stand, Gangwon are in ACL Elite, or they would at least qualify for the group stage. So the manager, phenomenal. The fact that he's been able to identify specific skills within these players and move them around. Lee Yu-hyun as a midfield player. Who'd have thought that? You know what I mean? Incredible. So most important player for the games ahead, I would probably actually say Hwang Min-gi, the right back, with special mentions for Marco Tucci and Kovacevic. Tucci's absence was felt a lot when he wasn't in that game a couple of weeks ago. And they aren't the best defensively. So when you take him out of the equation, it does look a little bit iffy, a bit messy. But what they will do is they will create lots of chances and score goals. And Hwang Min-gi is usually at the very center of that, all the creativity. They always look for him on that right-hand side with his socks up to his ankles, no further than that. Busy, cutting inside. Great to watch. And the fact that he got called up to the national team just shows how well he's been doing. Current title probability, I would give them a 45%, depending on what they do in the next 2 games. If they'd have beaten Ulsan, they could have done it. But they're quite a way off now, really. No, not that far off, but is it 4 points, I think? I think the pressure did get to them a little bit. They did start to buckle, but they should at least be getting ACL2, maybe even ACLE. But I think they've still got a good chance as long as they get 4, let's say 4 points for the next 2 games.
All right. I think, well, I'm going to give my percentage first this time, Andrew, and then I'll let you choose yours. But I think personally, I'm going to give them, I'll go a little bit higher. I'm going to say, I'm going to go 50. I fancy it. I think, yeah, 50. It sounds like
1 in 2 chance. Interesting.
Actually, that sounds quite a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Well. That's why I went for 45. a bit non-committal.
Yeah, let's go 45 as well. Andrew, quickly save me.
Brimfield Asher.
I was thinking of 40. I was thinking putting on the same level as FC Seoul. I think they're going to finish in and around the same number of points. You're talking about that run of form that they're on earlier on, the spell when they were the best team in the league. The game where they absolutely annihilated Incheon United, especially before halftime. That was the best, whatever the best manager of the year, best team in the season stuff. I thought that was the best performance I've seen out of any K-League 1 team so far this season. It's a pity for Luke because he was there for that, but they absolutely minced Incheon in that opening 45 minutes. I thought it was brilliant to watch. So I think had we done this podcast a couple of weeks ago, the number would have been higher. But yeah, the pressure has told a little bit. So I have them down to 40%. I think they're going to finish top 4 because I think Pohang and Suwon will finish below them.
All right. Okay, well then another surprise package, fresh from promotion last year, is Gimcheon Sangmu, who find themselves in second. Andrew, tell us about it. How are they here?
Yeah, Gimcheon Sangmu have had a really interesting season. It's hard to believe they're only 2 points off first because since the beginning of July, they've dropped 19 points, which seems like an enormous amount in a short period of time. They went on a bit of a losing run. Their title race looked over in August. They lost 3-0 away to Daegu, who had certainly at that particular point in time were in massive relegation problems. They then dropped more points at a relegation threat in Daejeon Hana Citizen. That was a 2-2 draw and Jeju away. But since then, they picked up 2 wins on the trot, and you wouldn't exactly say these have been anywhere near the best performances of the season. They beat Incheon 2-0 at home. Nervy enough win. The final goal came towards the end of the game. And then Suwon away 4-2. A couple of times they looked like they were going to blow a 2-goal lead in that game, but Lee Dong-kyung, we'll talk about him a little bit later on, just made sure that they came away with 3 points. And I just think I find it incredible that they're only 2 points off the top. The story of the season was really whenever they lost the game, they would go on a mad unbeaten run. They started the season really, really well, and then they got trashed by Seoul. I think it was a 5-0 or 5-1 defeat early on in the season. And then they went on an 11-game unbeaten run after that, which by any standards in any league around the world is a sensational run of form. I think Gwangju ended that particular run of form, but then they went on another long unbeaten run, and then that brought us to the spell in August where they seem to lose every second game. So I'm surprised they are where they are. They've had a brilliant season. I think at the start of the year, both of you guys suggested that Gimcheon Sangmu were going to do pretty well. I wasn't as sure. I was definitely wrong about this one. But coming up, I know like the final A is done, but with only 2 points off the first, their next 2 games are Gwangju at home this weekend, followed by, drumroll here, Ulsan Hyundai away. And that's before we have a short break. So there is a huge possibility that Gimcheon Sangmu go into the break top of the table before we play the last 5 games of the season. In terms of most important player, he started his career with Gimcheon a little bit slowly, Lee Dong-kyung, but he was unplayable at the weekend against Suwon FC. A brilliant performance, scored 1, had an assist. His spectacular free kick set up the first in that game. And it's just, I find stories like this really interesting because not only are his parent club the one who he's trying to chase down to win a championship this season, there's so much riding on this for him. Like, there's a championship to be won, and either his parent club Ulsan are going to win it, or I think it's likely that Kimcheon Sangwoo are the second most likely team to win the championship this season. Manager Chung Jong-young, like an amazing season, because again, I fancy them to be down towards the bottom of the table. They have the joint best or joint meanest defense so far this season. They score plenty of goals. And the ability to be able to just bring players together like he has. He can't go out there and sign somebody in July like some of the other teams can. He can't go out and sign. He's given what he's given, and he has to turn that into a championship winning side. So title challenge, I have them above 50%. And that's despite the fact that they dropped so many points since July. And it goes right back to what Paul said at the start of this podcast. Nobody seems to want this championship. So why can't Kimcheon win it? So I have them at around 60%.
Paul?
I feel more belief in Kimcheon now after listening to what Andrew just said there about them. Yeah, I mean, I think it's mental, but also fantastic that they're in this position. Like, you know, you can say what you want about the Army team, and there's only one Army team. It's a bit unfair for you know, they get all the best players, but just from a neutral point of view of seeing the Army team possibly win K-League 1. After they won K-League 2 last year, they would make history as being the only Army team to win the top division. Mm-hmm. And then the only team to then win back-to-back titles, having won K-League 2 the season before. No one would ever do that again or ever done it since, right? So it's incredible. I think I would, 60% probably. But then I don't. That doesn't mean that Ulsan are 40%. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's not like they're now the favourites. But I think 60%. But again, like I said about other teams, depends on what happens in these next few games. But what I will say about Kimcheon is they've bounced back. They've won their last 2, and that has made things look a lot better heading into the last 2 games before the split. And also, obviously, they beat Incheon at home, which they probably should do, given where the 2 teams are in the table. So that's not really that much of a surprise or something that you can really learn too much from. Scoring 4 away at Suwon, that is, I think, a sign of them getting themselves back together again.
Yeah. Well, I'll let's just call it 60. I mean, what do these probabilities really mean anyway? We don't know how they're calculated. We're just making them up. But I
think when we discussed it after the Ulsan one, it'll probably make a little bit more sense.
I'd hope so.
Where we figure who the favorites are. Maybe one of you guys think that Kimcheon are the favorite, but it'll probably just make a little bit more sense. And they have a great chance. I think that's just the best way of putting it. They have a superb chance. And I really hope they go to Munsu and win. I hope they go to Munsu and win in the last... before we go into the proper final.
But you're going full Kevin Keegan for a second there.
I love it.
But yeah, no, I also
just and get something.
I think the only thing I can add to it is just that I think Chung Jong-young has done a fantastic job in terms of, you know, if the KFA had a fair managerial hiring process and it was about a year or 2 down the line, I think having a manager who has done this where he just has a selection of players and he has to make a team out of them. He's basically...
That's very spicy of you to say that. I also agree, though, and I think he's probably taken this job because obviously he's worked with the KFA before, with the under 20 team, is it?
Yeah.
He's probably wanting the job again at some point.
Yeah.
He's definitely done enough, I think, to be someone that they should consider. But yeah, very spicy that about the selection process. On the same day that they've been having those hearings as well at the National Assembly.
Well, speaking of, let's move up to Ulsan because I feel it links in nicely for some reason. Ulsan currently sitting top of the table and, defending champions Ulsan. They went into the summer as then manager Hom Yeon-bo was sat in the dugout rather than in front of committee hearings. Ulsan started off strongly and have maintained a strong presence near the top place. Players left with the on-fire Lee Dong-kyung heading to the army, as we've just mentioned, and Martin Adam fetching suitors post-Euros, but they continued. Then their manager left to fill the Korean national team position, and still the wheels have managed to keep turning at the Munsu. In came Kim Pang-gon, a man who started his playing career for the Harangi before moving into management in Hong Kong's Premier League and then the Hong Kong national team itself before taking over at the helm of Malaysia. Ulsan, they've looked like, well, they've barely felt the switch at times of this upheaval. This could have derailed any other team, but here we are again talking about Ulsan probably going to do it. They're unbeaten in the last 6. However, they also do tend to drop points, like last weekend against Incheon, who were bottom of the table, which is ultimately causing them to fail in seeing this title to bed. If they are to do it, then it'll be thanks to the efforts of Joo Min-kyu. Yet the goals have dried up of late for him as well. He's only scored 8 this season, and his last goal was in July in the league. Meanwhile, Martin Adams' replacement, Iago Curlo, is still becoming accustomed to his surroundings. Yes, he's got 2 goals. He hasn't been there for very long. And he has shown impressive form at Gangwon. There is the hope that he will find form as well in this unlikely title charge. So he could also be pivotal. I do think perhaps Gustav Ludvigsson, although he has played as much as I thought as well. I was thinking he seems to stick out in my mind as always being involved, always having an influence on things. But he hasn't played as often as you would have imagined. Anyway, either way, they're still doing it. They're still finding results. And, well, because of that, I'm going to give them a very, very high title probability, 75%. They've been there, they've done that, and they're probably going to do it again. Sadly, for the league.
Yeah, I was going to give them high, actually, 85%. What I think happened, right? To use the harangi, the tiger sort of analogy, they were hungry before. They had to hunt. They labored and really sort of got every single ounce out of everything that they did in the last 2 seasons. But then they got a bit full. You know what I mean? They lost that hunger a little bit this season. A little bit of lack of desire, maybe. But then, when it looked like the food was getting taken away from them, they've wait a minute, I'm hungry again. I think that's what's happened, and now they're starting to get that appetite back a little bit. Unbeaten in 4, 3 wins out of the last 4 games. They'll still do it. We can all sit here and dream about Gangwon and Gimcheon, but unfortunately, Ulsan will do it. And it's funny, isn't it, how they become the Jeonbuk.
What do you mean? You said that like it's a negative thing. I look forward to their relegation.
Apart from you, Matthew, who's obviously thrilled that Jeonbuk won the league every year. Most of us didn't want that. And then Ulsan, they won 2. 3's a bit greedy now. Be fair.
Andrew, Ulsan, are they taking the title?
They are the thing. I went for them at the start of the season. I thought they were going to finish first. I'd give them about an 80% chance of winning it. I find it difficult. The only thing that gives me confidence that they might win it is that they've scored the most number of goals, or one of the most number of goals in the league. I think they scored 50 so far. But I was just checking this earlier on. Like their last 13 games, only twice have they scored more than 1 goal in a game. Like they're winning games 1-0 or they're losing games 1-0. They're just, as you said before, like key players have left for the army service or Joo Min-kyu is not scoring. It's the only thing I can cling on to in terms of them not winning the title is that they just don't seem to be able to find the back of the net the same regularity they did. The one exception in all this was that bizarre 5-4 win over Pohang Steelers. But I can't think, I can't see Gimcheon going there and winning. And this is the game that we talked about earlier on. And if they're already 2 points clear now and they do manage to turn Gimcheon over, then it probably will be over before it's ever really kind of got too exciting in Final A. But yeah, I'd give them a 75 to 80% chance of winning it. I'd be shocked if they don't win it from here, even though they're only 2 points ahead.
Well, there we go, everyone. 45 minutes to find out Ulsan is still going to win it. But speaking of, that is the end of this week's podcast. Before we go, though, we're just going to give you a quick wrap up of last week's results and the fixtures coming up in this round. So, Andrew, if you just want to tell us what else happened in the league last week, you want to just go through the results, and then Paul, if you can tell us what's coming up this weekend.
Yeah, sure. Well, the big talking point of last weekend was Daejeon Hana Citizen 0, Jeonbuk Motors 0. This is obviously a derby that means something very dearly here in K-League United. The big talking point is Gudek's red card in the 58th minute. 18,500 people paid in to see that decision by the referee. I'd love to know where you both sit on that one. JG United, just when we thought that they were on the way down or being dragged into a relegation battle. They went to Guangzhou and won 2-0. Sargent scoring a 91st minute goal just to put that game to bed. And then we talked about it a little bit on as well with Muyal, but Daegu drawing 1-1 at home to FC Seoul. Cecilia scoring a worldie in the 98th minute in front of 11,800. Big Stan had put Seoul ahead on the 80th minute mark. Just wondering what you guys thought of that red card very quickly. Was that the right decision or no?
Ridiculous.
No.
Can I tell you? I DM'd Gutek on Instagram because he followed me back, and I asked him if the club are going to appeal. He said, "Yeah, we're going to appeal." And then I saw the news broke that they had the meeting, but decided not to overturn the red card. He didn't know yet. I knew before him, so I sent him the link of the news article. He's like, "Is that confirmed?" I was like, "Yep." And he didn't even know how many games he's banned for. Nobody told him. So 2, if you listed in Gutek, it's 2 games.
Matt, red card.
I have no opinion. I didn't. No, definite red. But yeah.
The other games ended that Suwon 2, Gimcheon 4, Pohang 2, Gang 1-1. A crazy end to that game, and it wasn't a great game in Incheon, but Incheon drew 0-0 with Ulsan. So they were all the results from last weekend.
All right.
And coming up this weekend, 2 games on Friday. Daejeon against Ulsan, which I'm going to. Then it's Pohang against Incheon. That one's the one with English commentary on K-League TV. Then we've got Gangwon against Daegu, Gimcheon against Gwangju on Saturday, Jeonbuk against Jeju also on Saturday, and then Seoul versus Suwon FC on Sunday. That's the game that Matthew and I are doing on commentary.
Yeah, indeed. So we can catch all the games with English. Well, the games with English commentary, the 3 of them for the weekend. That's Pohang versus Incheon and Gangwon versus Daegu. That's with Alex Jensen. And then, as you just said, Paul, me and you, we've got Seoul and Suwon. You can watch all the games on K-League TV for K-League 1 and K-League 2, both with Korean and English commentary. But yeah, those 3 with the English commentary for this particular weekend. That's tv.kleague.com if you're outside of Korea. All free to watch, no subscription required. Anyway, that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at all 6 teams in Final B and our best guesses at who is going down in one of the tightest relegation scraps in the league's history. You can find us on social media, all at K-League United. That's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can also support us over at Patreon, patreon.com/K-League United, where we put all our Mix Zone interviews up first before they hit the airwaves on our podcast. Andrew, as well, I believe you've just done a Mix Zone interview over at Bucheon yesterday to celebrate their 600th game. So you can...
You wouldn't know they were celebrating their 600th game.
Sorry?
I was going to say you wouldn't know they were celebrating their 600 game. I was expecting murals everywhere and cladding and tarping. There was nothing. There was nothing there at all. The manager was asked about it in the post-match press conference, and to be honest with you, it sounds absolutely awful right now. But when I was arranging the interview with Takashi Kazuki, great fellow by the way, absolutely really nice fellow to talk to, I was telling the media officer, I just want to know what it's like to represent Bucheon in their 600 game, and I completely forgot.
Well, we'll have to try that and get that again before we do the promotion podcast in a couple of weeks' time. But that's in a couple of weeks. Next week we'll be doing Final B, and for this week, well, this is going to be that's the end of the episode. I've forgotten how we end these things.
Just end.
But just end.
Yeah.
From Andrew Farrell, Paul Neat, and myself, Matthew Binns. Thanks so much for listening. Goodbye.
정조선 공영 폭격기 김신우